Gold became a way to do this, and in society, we all run a ledger. Kings had a ledger of how much gold they had. Vaults, right, in the last 100 years were always measured. Money was always measured around gold in custody. That is, banks had in their vaults. Central banks had gold. It was all a ledger. Even wearing gold or using a lot of golds by the Indians for thousands of years, it was a ledger. It was how much gold you had, was how wealthy you were. It was a way to run how much money you had. So the concept of money, it's very hard to define. It is, if I asked each one of you what's money, we'll probably have an answer for each person has a different answer what money means. But money is, as economists have defined it, it is a unit of account, it is a store of value, and it is a method of payment. And over the last 10,000 years, we had 2 blocks of 5,000 years each. And thinking about the next 1,000 years, we could argue that Bitcoin has a chance of doing that for the future. It has the same characteristics. It's a decentralized general ledger. It's a ledger. And it's decentralized. No one runs it, but it runs everywhere, every single day, by thousands of computers or hundreds of thousands of computers. It is electronic by format instead of being atoms like gold, which is why gold lasted for so long, was because it was really hard to replicate gold. It's very hard to do it again. But if you think about it, for a long time, even the kings had crowns that were done in aluminum, because aluminum was even harder than gold, and it was even more expensive. But since industry figured out a way how to create it in fabrics, in the industry side of the world, aluminum lost the intrinsic value, and gold became the only one. So Bitcoin it's a general ledger, decentralized. It is in the form of bits and bytes instead of atoms. So it is completely fungible, and you can store it in any format you want. And it has one extra characteristic that gold didn't have back then, or that doesn't have today, which has a cost of transaction of near zero. You can move it in real time with a cost of near zero anywhere in the world. So when you think about it, and we fast forward to 2014 now, and we look where we are. We're in a world where it's easier to call somebody for free anywhere in the world. But if you're speaking to that person and you want to send them $10, you can't. You simply can't. There's no way of doing it. You gotta stop, you gotta go some other place, you gotta walk, you gotta go to a store, you gotta go to your online banking, you gotta give them so many coordinates, it takes forever to happen. You got 5 billion smartphones in the world. 5 billion. And only 1 billion bank accounts. Those 4 billion people are demanding to buy apps on their phones, like we do. For all of us, we have a bank account linked to our app stores, either Google Play or iOS. Those persons don't have that. Bitcoin has, electronic money has ways of solving for many of these issues. And these are just examples of minimum issues that we can see. So when we look at Bitcoins, what we need to think is, what is it? Is it a store of value? Is it an asset? Then is it a currency? Or is it money? It's a concept of storing and recording a ledger of decentralized money. And the way I find it to define it better is that it's a protocol. It's a protocol for money. So it can be whatever you want it to be. If you grew up like me, I didn't grow up in the US, so I was not used to store value I was not used to always trust dollar as my currency. I had hyperinflation growing up. I had 7 zeros added to my currency in Venezuela. I saw paper change 4 times. And we had to store value in any form of factor we could. And the majority of the world lives in an environment like that. And for me, money was storing value. So what do you need for that? You need something that is scarce by nature, that is not controlled by a government that could change the numbers or change the issuing, and that was in the nature of having gold back then, or silver coins, and all these things. I got gifts that were gold coins when I was growing up. So you could describe Bitcoin as a store of value for many billions of people around the world that could use it for that. It is a known quantity of 21 million. There will never be more than 21 million. We get there over the next 100 years. There's an equation to get there. All of this is public, and you can read about it. I'm not gonna. I could spend time here talking about how Bitcoin works from a technology perspective, but you have a whole day of panels to look at that. And it is like trying to explain to you in 1992 what TCP/IP does. We could have a nice conversation about what TCP/IP does that allows computers to talk to, but then I'd rather talk to you about what happened when the web browser came and how that changed the internet completely. And this is exactly the same thing. Bitcoin, as a protocol, resembles TCP/IP in 1992 or 91. And what we are right now is building the first layer of web browsers, the equivalent of the web browsers, in an environment that will allow this concept to explode and to become useful to everybody. So there's not one killer user application. It's not going to be, am I going to use it to pay? Because when I use it to pay, that's going to be when Bitcoin takes off. You may be right, but that's a very US-centric way of looking at the world. And the world is much bigger than all of us that we live here in this country. Payment is a component of money, but it's not the only one. And we've seen cases already around the world with Bitcoins that is just much more than payments. We think of payments here because we don't think about store of value. In nature, we always store in dollars. We always store in dollars, so we're thinking, what can I account for? What can I pay for this? Where can I pay for this? And that's great, and it will happen when the time is right, but it's not going to happen when you have 5 million wallets scattered all over the world of people. There's an estimate that there's anywhere between 3 to 10 million wallets. My guesstimate is 5 million wallets with Bitcoins already today active in the world. That number used to be 500,000, probably 6 months ago, and it was less than 100,000 a year ago. So when you find scale is when you see those metrics just ramping up, and when you see volume ramping up. So going back to history, when you think about the future of money, you need to understand that Bitcoin is very different to every single person. And we're all going to find a different user cases. So we're going to see businesses being built around custodial. We're going to see the first banks giving you services like banks to store and give you service to your Bitcoins. Store them for you, give you access to it, give you safe haven, give you protection that they're very well stored, because today half of the media news, 6 months ago, everything you heard on the news about Bitcoins was that it was used for illegal drugs in Silk Road. That was the title of Bitcoins. That was the next 5 words that came after Bitcoins. But you know what? In Greek society, they invented the coins the way we know them because they needed to settle prostitution. People needed to pay for prostitution and gambling, and prostitutes did not accept chickens. So they had to, seriously, it's every single currency has had a history of finding the low-hanging fruits of demand, and then they become massive and they become used for everybody. Right now, the headlines of Bitcoins are not anymore around Silk Road and those aspects, because that's not where that's been taken down and didn't affect Bitcoin. They are in different, it's all about volatility, it's all about when I'm going to use it to pay for it, how do I store it. Some account got hacked and they lost 1,000 Bitcoins at wallet service. Well, it resembles the Wild West. We still have all of these little banks that have vaults behind them, and the vaults are computers, and they're not working in a synchronized way, they're not doing protection to the layer we are. We're going to see a lot of that happening in the near future. We're going to see different user cases of remittances being built. It's so easy to send money to anybody anywhere in the world in a second. You don't matter if it's Saturday night or Friday morning, or if it's $1 or 1 cent or $1,000 or $1 million. You can do it in real time. So we'll see a whole layer of businesses appear around that. We're going to see institutional money come in and find ways of building, of holding this, storing, or even using it to transact and to settle transactions between them. We're going to see a universe of aspects coming out, and I'm here because part of my role, I'm in the Bitcoin Foundation. I'm one of the board members there, and I can tell you that every single day around the world, there are over 100 events of people self-organizing to discuss and find and talk about Bitcoins. Every single day. And they contact the foundation, they ask for resource or data or for somebody to go speak. It is just unbelievable. It doesn't even, you cannot even imagine the countries or the things that are being spoken about. Even in places like Iran are building Bitcoin protocol, are using the protocol to build some sort of business within. It's just all over the world. There's no borders to this. So I just got a sign that I got 5 minutes, and I wanted to answer questions. You got a whole day of Bitcoin panel, which looks exciting and with the right people to listen to, but I'm open to any questions.
Hi, I'm Jose. I had a question. One of the challenges conceptually has to do with the tax authorities. So whenever money leaves countries or enters countries, tax authorities are interested in tracking that and identifying the source and making sure that taxes were paid wherever that money was earned. So, what is your vision for how that problem can be fundamentally solved?
So money has always had that problem, right? I mean, cash has that problem. It's hard to tax for cash, and you can move cash around the world, and we know that there are more dollars outside the US than in the US right now. So it's not it is a problem. With Bitcoins, it's a better to solve problem because everything gets registered in a decentralized ledger forever. So you can, if I gave you one Bitcoin today, if I send it to you, you can basically track that Bitcoin since the day it was created. And you can see how many times it shifted hands and which wallets had it and for how long they had it. So as a method of taxation, it could be a much better method, but it will take a while for governments to understand or to embrace or to figure out what's the best way of working with it. I could envision a world, maybe I'm wrong, but I could envision a world where, as the same way you've asked in your US tax, for example, to declare any account you have outside the US for more than $10,000, you gotta give me information and account numbers and bank and SAT balance. It could happen that they ask you, hey, if you have a Bitcoin wallet that has more than 10,000 equivalent dollars, send me your Bitcoin address. And they can go and see it in the general ledger. So there are many ways that could evolve.
Hey, great. So what do you think is the most innovative or revolutionary impact of Bitcoin, either now or 3, 5, 10, 15 years in the future?
Yes. I like to talk more about the future because now there's a lot of people working on very interesting things. But as a venture investor, because that's my full-time job, we probably have the largest exposure of any venture capital firm in the world to Bitcoin. What we get excited with is, if you think Bitcoin is a protocol, and you agree with the concept, is where can this be taken? And I always give this example, which is hopefully one day happens, is let's take a public company. Let's take, for the sake of it, let's take Yahoo. Yahoo has probably 2 million shareholders that trade 2 million people have shares of Yahoo. You could literally buy, Yahoo Corporation could buy 1 Bitcoin or 2 Bitcoins, divide them in 2 million pieces, because you can divide each Bitcoin up to 1/100 million of a fraction. Attach to each piece a share certificate of Yahoo electronically as a token, and you distribute those Satoshis, which is the name of that minimum accounting unit, to 2 million people all over the world that are Yahoo shareholders, and now you have a decentralized ledger of Yahoo stock. And anybody that wants to trade Yahoo can just buy and sell them and send them from their phone in real time. They settle, they don't have to wait for 3 days, there's a price. They can have all of these tokens working in real time. So if you think in terms of financial services and equities being transacted in a decentralized ledger, you could think about smart contracts. You could think about titles, home titles, car titles. What would happen if Tesla decides to start to give you your titles of your car in an electronic token? And you attach that token, and whoever owns that token owns the car. There's so much use that can be driven from using this decentralized ledger as a protocol that it only needs fantastic entrepreneurs working hard at building this, and we're starting to see them.
So clearly there's this great rosy future, there's all these ways to attach attributes to coins, there's da-da-da-da-da. But there are also risks, technical risks, social risks, regulatory risks. I mean, and you have exposures.
Yeah.
What do you see the possibilities of, can you handicap, of Bitcoin failing and not achieving this future?
Sure. So, like anything which has a grand vision in the future, it has a lot of risk in the short term. It is still like an experiment, and it's going to be a very binary experiment. It could be really, really big, and it could change the way we look at money, or it could fail dramatically. And the areas where it could fail dramatically are not governments. I don't think governments are the one that make this fail. Maybe if they postpone adoption, or it postpones the user cases from coming up the way they should be, but that's not the case. Where this fails is where trust in the system disappears. Because we have to trust something. The same way we trusted gold. If somebody had figured out a way to chemically replicate gold, we would have lost trust in it a few thousand years ago. And the way you lost trust is that the system gets hacked. Not the participants in the system, but the core system. And there are a few examples of ways that it can be. There's an example called the 51% processing power, which means that if a bad party controls 51% of the processing power that settles all transactions around the world, they could rewrite the ledger and change the ledger. And there are solutions to that because it's an open source protocol. You could solve for that. You can have trusted parties. But right now, if you wanted to fail, that's a way to fail. A year ago, to do that, it cost probably a couple $100 million or less in hardware to have that. But the cost of hardware, of the processing power in Bitcoin, has exponentially grown so fast that if you wanted to do that today, it's probably closer to $2 billion. So I will wonder how much people are willing to invest $2 billion to destroy $10 billion of value. Because once you buy them, you destroy them. So it just keeps growing and getting more exponential. But that's the biggest risk. It is still a technological experiment.
This was a great way to start the day. Let's have a big hand for Micky, everybody. Thank you so